What would you sacrifice for the chance to reclaim a lost love and family hidden in the shadows of your past? Welcome to Happiness of Love, your daily dose of K-dramas. Get ready to fall in love with unforgettable stories. Can you tell us where are you listening from? The flashes of camera lights pulsated like a heartbeat as Sarah Lee stepped onto the stage, her shimmering gown reflecting the excitement of the crowded auditorium. The Seoul Fashion Excellence Awards, a pinnacle of recognition in her fiercely competitive industry, marked not only her current triumph but also the culmination of years of hard work and heartache. As she graciously accepted the Designer of the Year award, her mind swirled with the whirlwind of emotions. Each applause felt like a bittersweet echo of a time long past, a time when love intertwined with ambition, innocence hinged on dreams, and a single choice had shaped her world. Behind the glamorous facade, Sarah fought the urge to glance at the shadows seated among the elite. She could feel the weight of latent memories hanging in the air, especially one hauntingly familiar face she had left behind. In the thick of the celebration, David Han sat rigidly, his posture reflecting years of underlying tension. The CEO of Han Group, he was the epitome of success wrapped in the invisible chains of expectation imposed by a family that regarded emotions as weaknesses. The wave of shock that washed over him upon seeing Sarah was no stranger, it was a haunting reminder of the raw tenderness they once shared. As she stood there, glowing and graceful, he felt a deep anger mixed with regret claw at his insides. How could she look so unblemished after all these years while he was still burdened by their abrupt separation? He struggled to reconcile the elegant figure in front of him with the memories of laughter and shared dreams, now eclipsed by confusion and unresolved questions. After the awards ceremony, the air buzzed with excitement, but for Sarah, it felt electric with impending doom. She leaned against the elegantly adorned bar, her heart racing as she tried to catch her breath amid the sea of well-wishers. Just as she turned to compose herself, she felt a looming presence drawing near. David, stripped of his cool demeanor and rising above the crowd like an imposing storm, approached her, demanding answers only he could ask. "Why did you leave without a word?" he pressed, his voice layered with pain and disbelief. Sarah's pulse quickened as she felt the gaze of 1,000 eyes lingering on them, audibly churning memories of love and loss in her chest. "I didn't leave. I had to survive," she responded, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. There lay an unspoken truth beneath her guarded words, one she wasn't ready to unveil. The laughter and clinking glasses around them faded into mere background noise. The memory of their past hung thick in the air, weighing heavily on her chest. David's eyes narrowed, an intense mixture of determination and hurt igniting a fire within her. She was still that spirited girl fighting against the tide, but she now had more to protect. A sudden tap on David's shoulder broke their charged moment and Jessica Choi appeared, her sharp smile belying the venom that dripped from every syllable. She saw the unmistakable spark between them and felt her opportunity slipping. "David, darling, why don't we head to the balcony? It's too crowded in here," she said, the enticement in her tone trying to pull him away. He hesitated, torn between the remnants of a past love that still beckoned him and the current life dictated by societal expectations. Meanwhile, Sarah clenched her fists, knowing that old wounds were about to be reopened in the most unexpected way, but also realizing that the secret she held close to her heart was slipping ever closer to the edge of exposure. Days passed after the award ceremony, yet the echoes of that night lingered in the corners of their lives. Sarah found herself restless, her mind spiraling back to David's penetrating gaze as if it could read the truth lurking within her. She faced her sketches with impatience, the fabric slipping through her fingers while thoughts of the past threatened to pull her under. Across town, David wrestled with a mix of anger and longing, dissecting every moment they shared through the years, trying to weave sense into the chaos that had become his life. What had been a mere memory now surged forth with clarity, igniting a fierce resolve within him to uncover the reason behind Sarah's abandonment. Unknown to them both, their worlds were about to collide in ways neither could foresee, reigniting a passion overshadowed by betrayal and the innocent bond they had both lost touch with. As secrets unfurled and truths clawed to the surface, the stage was set for a confrontation that could reshape the very essence of their lives. The grand hall of the Seoul Fashion Excellence Awards shimmered with anticipation, an air of elegance that enveloped the guests in a cocoon of excitement. As the spotlight descended upon the stage, Sarah Lee stood poised, an embodiment of grace and achievement. Dressed in a stunning ensemble from her own collection, she exuded a confidence that belied the turmoil within her heart. The audience erupted in applause as she approached the podium, the clinking of glasses and whispers of admiration blending into a harmonious melody. As she began her acceptance speech for the coveted Designer of the Year award, the crowd hung on her every word, but her thoughts drifted to memories she thought she had buried deep. She recalled the dreams she had spun not only for her brand but also those intertwined with the man who had once shared her aspirations, the man she had to leave behind when the world turned against them. Seated among the elite audience was David Hahn, his presence commanding yet overshadowed by a storm of emotions. As the CEO of Hahn Group, every eye in the room recognized him, but in this moment, he was a man lost in the past. Watching Sarah reclaim her place in the spotlight, he felt his pulse quicken, the clamor of voices around him fading into a distant hum. The moment their eyes locked, an electric current surged between them, igniting a plethora of unspoken feelings. In that instant, David was transported back in time, memories of laughter and shared dreams filling his mind as though they had never been tainted by heartbreak and separation. Time stood still as he soaked in the sight of her, the woman who once meant everything to him and now appeared as radiant and untouchable as ever, yet bearing an unshakable air of mystery. As she concluded her speech, Sarah held the award high, her smile radiant but brittle, masking the inner conflict that threatened to erupt. The applause washed over her, but all she could hear was the echo of his name, David, whispering in the shadows of her heart. She determinedly steeled herself, unwilling to falter in front of the cameras and influential figures, even as the unrelenting memories of their love tugged at her, beckoning her to acknowledge the past. David's gaze bore into her, a mix of astonishment and longing, igniting a spark within him that he had thought long extinguished. He knew he had to speak with her, to seek answers for the questions gnawing at him since their abrupt separation, questions that had remained unanswered for too long. The gala continued with laughter and chance encounters, yet for David, there was only one woman he could see through the haze. He fought through the throng of well-wishers, his heart pounding like a drum as he approached her at the after-party, where the celebratory ambience hummed with excitement. Sarah was surrounded by admirers, her laughter light as she shared fleeting moments of joy, but the moment their eyes met again, a heaviness settled between them, as if their shared history whispered just beneath the surface. Noticing David inching closer, she braced herself, a million thoughts racing through her mind. "Why did you disappear?" he asked without preamble, his voice low but intense, as the festivity noise around them faded into oblivion. The heat of his presence sent a jolt through her, reminding her of the very feelings she had fought to suppress. Caught off guard, Sarah's composure faltered for a fraction of a second before she regained her strength. "It's been years, David." "It doesn't matter anymore," she replied, attempting to deflect his probing. Her voice was steady, but inside, old wounds throbbed, the years of silence rushing back like a tidal wave as she tried to keep it all at bay. David, however, couldn't allow her to dismiss their past so easily. Something about the way she spoke, the way her eyes flickered with emotion, told him there was more behind her words. He could sense her walls, built meticulously over the years, and his curiosity only intensified, fueled by an overwhelming need to understand what had transpired in the years since her departure. Nearby, Jessica Choi, David's ex-fiancée who had graciously maintained a presence at the event, watched the interaction unfold with keen eyes. A sliver of jealousy pierced through her, igniting her ambition to discover the truth. She saw the chemistry simmering between them, a connection that couldn't easily be severed, and it ignited a competitive fire within her. As David continued to press, Sarah's resolve began to crack. She felt the weight of his gaze, burdened with questions and hurt, and in the silence that stretched between them, the memories of love, laughter, and an unfinished story loomed large. As they stood inches apart, the bustling world around them faded into oblivion, and Sarah knew she was fighting against a wave of emotions too powerful to ignore, even as she desperately clung to the hope of keeping her secret hidden, just a little bit longer. After the dazzling ceremony ended and the lights of the Seoul Fashion Excellence Awards dimmed, the after-party buzzed with vivid energy, vibrant chatter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Basking in the afterglow of her triumph, Sarah Lee felt a mix of exhilaration and anxiety as she wandered through the crowded venue adorned with artful displays and elegant guests. Her heart raced with each passing minute, and she felt the weight of the past pressing heavily on her chest, an unwelcome reminder that tonight she hadn't just won an award, she had also come face to face with the shadow of her former life. As she maneuvered through the sea of influencers and fashion moguls, her mind drifted back to the man who had once held her heart, and she couldn't shake the thought that he might appear. The atmosphere was charged, a magnetic pull drawing her thoughts back to him, which she fought against with every ounce of her determination. The last thing she needed was for David Hahn to remind her of the chapters she had closed so carefully. Suddenly, as if the universe conspired to challenge her resolve, she spotted him across the room, his presence commanding, with an unmistakable air of intensity. Their eyes locked for a fleeting moment, and the world around them seemed to fade away. Sarah felt a surge of warmth mixed with fear flood through her as he strode toward her, his aura radiating confusion and unspent pain that she recognized too well. David approached with purpose, his heart pounding faster than the pulsating beat of the music surrounding them. He was no longer the boy who had loved her so passionately, but a man marked by the trenches of life, wearing the armor of his powerful position. Steeling himself as he closed the distance, he fixed his gaze on her, determination simmering behind his dark eyes. Why did you leave me, Sarah? Why did you vanish without a word? His voice cut through the ambient noise, a rawness that echoed their fractured past and left her momentarily speechless. The warmth of the party surrounding them felt like a vice, closing in, making every heartbeat a reminder of what had been. Sarah felt her defenses rising instinctively, the vulnerability that threatened to spill out churning within her. She brushed aside his inquiry with practiced indifference, her heart darkened by shadows of fear and the burden of the truth that loomed large between them. That was a long time ago. It doesn't matter anymore, she responded coolly, her tone firm yet laden with an anguish she hoped he could not see. The emotional bridge she worked tirelessly to fortify felt perilously fragile under his probing gaze, and she fought to keep her composure, to shield her secret Ethan, their son, from any unwarranted intrusion or scrutiny. David could sense the walls she had constructed over the years. The distance in her voice was stark, yet it ignited a flicker of intrigue within him. It was clear that her guardedness masked something deeper, something significant that she wasn't ready to share. The flicker of hope danced on the edges of his heart, the idea that perhaps there was still a shred of their past interwoven with their present. He leaned closer, challenging the silence that enveloped them, drawing on the connection they once shared like an invisible thread. Why do I feel like you're hiding something from me, Sarah? He asked, his tone softer yet filled with the intensity of unspoken questions, betraying his curiosity and his heart's longing. Watching her carefully, he noted the shift in her expression, a momentary crack in her armor that made his chest tighten with longing and regret, sharpening the edges of their unresolved feelings. Meanwhile, Jessica Choi, lurking nearby and observing the intimate exchange, felt a pang of jealousy strike her, piercing through the glamorous atmosphere. She had been quick to establish her position as David's fiancée, clinging to an image of control, yet witnessing this raw encounter revealed an unsettling truth about the connection between David and Sarah that she couldn't ignore. A wave of suspicion coursed through her. It was evident that their histories wove a far deeper narrative than she had ever considered. She could see the flicker of unresolved feelings and the chasm of unspoken words that lay between them, and jealousy tightened in her chest as she watched David's gaze soften when he looked at Sarah, drawing her further into turmoil. As the precarious poker game of emotions played out in front of her, Jessica decided to take action, her mind racing with plans to dig deeper. She needed to unearth every hidden detail, every secret that Sarah might be concealing. Intent on maintaining her grip on David, she sought the truth, determined to eliminate any competition that might threaten her position as she stood in the shadows, planning her next move. Despite the distracted chaos of the after-party, the room felt isolated around Sarah and David, the weight of their shared past eclipsing the celebratory festivities. The flickering lights reflected the turmoil within them, but both remained locked in a hesitation born of love, fear, and the desires they had yet to confront. David Hahn was buried deep in the responsibilities of running Hahn Group, a towering figure in the corporate world yet feeling small and isolated within its walls. His office, a sleek embodiment of modern elegance, echoed with the sounds of bustling employees just outside his door, but inside, he remained a prisoner to his thoughts. It was on one of these long, overwhelming days that a magazine article featuring Sarah Lee flickered across his screen, capturing his attention like a moth drawn to a flame. Her radiant smile shone brightly against the backdrop of high fashion, and for a moment, time stood still as nostalgia washed over him like a tidal wave. The headline proclaimed her as the visionary behind luxury, but it was the image that truly gripped him, an intimate snapshot of Sarah holding the hand of a young boy, whose innocent face radiated joy. David felt an unsettling jolt in his chest as he studied the child. There was something undeniably familiar about him, a spark that ignited a flicker of recognition hidden deep within the recesses of his memory. Forcing himself to shake the discomfort, David tried to rationalize it away, brushing it off as mere coincidence. Yet, the more he scrutinized the image, the more undeniable the similarities became. The boy's bright brown eyes reflected a depth he could hardly articulate, a sparkle that reminded him startlingly of his own youth. Each feature, the gentle curve of his jaw, the way his hair fell in soft curls, felt like pieces of a puzzle David had never realized were missing. The thought began to gnaw at him, infecting his mind with an increasingly potent blend of suspicion and yearning. Was it possible that this child could be his? Torn between rationality and hope, he began to replay memories of his past with Sarah, frantically sifting through fragments that had once brought him joy but left him with a painful void. He thought back to their youthful laughter, the promises they had made under starlit skies, and the way her eyes would light up when she spoke of her dreams. Yet, the bitter smear of betrayal came crashing back as he remembered the day she vanished from his life, leaving nothing but echoes of her footsteps behind. Distant whispers of his family's stoic disapproval floated back into his consciousness, and doubt wrapped around him like a shroud. If Sarah really did leave him willingly, why would she keep a child from him? His heart ached at the possibilities that swirled in his mind, but an uneasy part of him felt that perhaps it was not so simple. Surely, a truth deeper than her mere absence lingered in the shadows of Sarah's departure. With each page he turned, the nagging sensation that her secrets carried weight heavy enough to anchor him to a past he never understood became unshakable. And now, the perfect opportunity to seek answers stood before him like a key half buried in the layers of his confusion. Still, the path toward confronting Sarah was not straightforward. The tension from their last encounter loomed like an unwelcome omen, reminding him that vulnerability was not a luxury he could afford. Yet the potential existence of a son, a part of him he never knew, loomed larger and larger with each passing hour. As David leaned back in his chair, the coldness of the leather against his skin only heightened the heat of realization that shot through him. The answer lay in front of him. Sarah had an untold story, one that might illuminate the darkness surrounding their shared past. Determination settled within him, and with it ignited a fierce desire to uncover the truth, no matter where it led him or what walls it forced him to break down. Behind the carefully curated image of Sarah Lee was a woman whose secrets were intricately woven with his own, and David could no longer ignore the call of the unknown. As he stared into the depths of the child's welcoming eyes on the magazine page, he realized that whether he was ready or not, this journey would inevitably begin with a confrontation, one that held the promise of healing, revelations, and perhaps, a fragmented heart finding its way back home. With a buzz of anticipation in the air, the announcement of a high-profile fashion collaboration between Han Group and Ethan Lee Design sent ripples through the industry, captivating audiences and igniting a flurry of discussion. Sarah Lee could hardly believe her ears as the news broke. The excitement of the opportunity was overshadowed by a familiar weight pressing on her chest. The thought of having to work alongside David Han again sent chills down her spine. As the CEO of Han Group, David's presence was as commanding as ever, his every decision meticulously calculated to uphold his family's legacy, yet Sarah still found herself longing to be the girl he once knew instead of the woman forged by hardship and loneliness. In the early dawn light filtering through her studio windows, she held her breath, staring at her latest collection, reminding herself that she had built this brand not only for herself but for her son, Ethan, whose eyes sparkled with admiration and innocence each time he saw her design grace the runway. Their paths converged in a series of meetings meant to strategize the collaborative venture, and each encounter filled the air with an electric tension. David entered the room, exuding a charisma that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. His dark hair perfectly styled, tailored suit hugging his form sharply, he approached with powerful strides that took her back to a time when her heart danced to the beat of his laughter. It struck her how handsome he remained, yet his eyes told a different story, one tainted with the ache of unresolved love, misunderstandings, and unspoken words. Sarah resolved to keep her walls fortified despite the rush of emotion swirling within her when she noticed the way David's gaze lingered on her, sometimes filled with a warmth she had almost forgotten and sometimes clouded with confusion and hurt. David, on the other hand, found it impossible to detach himself from her presence. He could detect the careful balance she maintained between professionalism and vulnerability. He sensed the tension in the air each time he looked her way, their brief encounters punctuated by stolen glances, muffled heartbeats, and a desire to breach the silence that loomed over them. As they spent more time together, David became increasingly invested in understanding the depths of her reluctance. He was relentless in finding ways to engage with Sarah, whether by casually commenting on her designs or suggesting impromptu brainstorming sessions, all while trying to navigate the carefully constructed barriers she had put up. He observed the subtle changes in her expressions, the way her brow furrowed slightly when he made a passing remark about their shared history. He remembered the laughter they once shared, the light-hearted banter that flowed so easily between them, only to feel each word now weighted with unspoken truths. "Why do you make this so hard?" He found himself whispering one afternoon, frustration creeping into his voice as he attempted to peel back the layers of her guarded exterior. To this, Sarah merely shook her head, her defenses rising once again as she replied that some things were better left in the past, unwilling to grapple with the complexities unfolding between them. Ethan, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface, happened upon one meeting with his innocent curiosity. He had tagged along to visit his mother's studio, eyes wide with wonder as he took in the bustling atmosphere and vivid color palette of fabric swatches. As Sarah began to introduce her son to David, she felt a mix of hope and trepidation gnawing at her heart. She caught a glimpse of David's expression, an amalgamation of surprise and intrigue, the unmistakable way his warm gaze landed on the boy, a glance that ignited Ethan's curiosity. "Is he going to help you make pretty clothes, Mommy?" Ethan chirped, his childlike innocence contrasting starkly with the weighty history between the adults. The question struck David like a lightning bolt, throwing fuel onto the growing fire of suspicion already raging within him. Suddenly, the resemblance between Ethan and his younger self became more pronounced, and doubts that had been flickering in the back of his mind began to flare into unmistakable reality. Meanwhile, Jessica's observant nature served as a catalyst for her growing obsession with Sarah. She watched David's every interaction with Sarah from the sidelines, her mind racing with jealousy as an insatiable need for control gripped her. Jessica was determined to uncover any secrets that Sarah might possess, driven by the need to diminish the woman who had dared to step back into David's life. With calculated patience, she began digging, scouring social media and industry gossip, piecing together fragments of Sarah's past that had been kept hidden from David. Each revelation fueled Jessica's disdain, and her cunning ambition twisted her motives, ensuring that Sarah's secrets would be brought to light, no matter the cost. Caught in a web of ambition and manipulation, Sarah and David were propelled toward a confrontation neither could foresee, pushed further apart by the very forces that sought to bring them together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the Seoul skyline, Jessica sat in a plush leather chair in her penthouse apartment, her mind racing as she pored over the latest gossip columns that featured Sarah's triumphant return to the limelight. The mention of the young boy seen with Sarah in the photographs ignited a flicker of curiosity within her, and soon a creeping suspicion took hold. With a determined glint in her eye, she decided that this would be a secret worth uncovering. That evening, her fingers clicked swiftly over the keys of her laptop, gathering information, piecing together snippets of Sarah's life until one name emerged: Ethan Lee. With her heart pounding and a malicious smile creeping upon her lips, she dialed the number of Chairman Han, eager to reveal the truth that could threaten Sarah's newfound success. When the chairman's calm yet commanding voice came through the line, Jessica wasted no time. She revealed that Sarah had given birth to a son and kept him a secret from the Han family, describing it as a scandal that would shake their prestigious legacy to its core. The fury in his voice was palpable as he responded, vowing to take immediate action against this betrayal of their son's lineage, a breach of the family honor that simply could not be tolerated. Meanwhile, Sarah was unwittingly caught in a tightening web of deceit as she navigated the intricacies of working alongside David. Every meeting started distancing her from Ethan, who remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing just beneath the surface. The once familiar scent of freshly tailored fabrics filled her workspace, triggering memories of late nights spent designing with David by her side. These days, as he stepped into the room, it was impossible to ignore the electric tension between them, each stolen glance heavy with unspoken emotions. And as she watched him work, she could see the signs of his feelings starting to resurface, despite his occasional resistance. Sarah's heart was a storm of conflicting emotions. She longed to share her life with him but felt paralyzed by the fear that the truth about Ethan might tear them apart all over again. She watched David attempt to focus, his gaze flickering toward her every so often, laden with a worry that only intensified her inner turmoil. His lips would curve into a half-smile as they joked about trivial matters but then quickly faltering as he remembered the weight of the unsaid. How long could she keep her secret buried? As days went by, a sense of pressure began to mount within Sarah, each tick of the clock echoing her anxious thoughts as dangers lurked around every corner. She found herself frequently glancing toward the door, expecting Jessica to storm in, seeking to wield her newfound information like a weapon. Yet, at the same time, living in this state of uncertainty brought David's complexity into stark relief. He was a man torn between familial loyalty and the fierce love that had never truly waned. Unbeknownst to her, David was also grappling with his own feelings, tangled in memories of passion shared with Sarah mixed with doubts about why she had turned away. During a late-night brainstorming session, Sarah caught David's eye as she discussed upcoming designs, and in that fleeting moment, something shifted. She thought she detected a hint of the boyish charm he once radiated, a reminder of the dreams they once shared together, a stark contrast to the burden of expectations he carried from his family. Unable to push those thoughts away, he cleared his throat and commented on her vision, noting how her creativity pulled from her experiences, infusing her designs with depth and emotion. As Sarah listened to him, feeling the warmth of enthusiasm envelop her like a soft cashmere shawl, she wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, the power of their connection could still draw them back together, yet her heart trembled with trepidation. When David secretly grieved for the time lost, she remained oblivious to how much he yearned for a family, a chance to be close to her and their child. Still, behind the smokescreen of their professional worlds, unseen forces began to conspire against them, both unaware that Jessica's determination to destroy Sarah's standing was only gaining momentum, driven by jealousy and a desperate longing to reclaim David's affection. As an unanticipated storm brewed on the horizon, the pair remained blissfully ignorant, drawing each other closer even as the first lightning strikes of revelation whispered of impending chaos, their fates intertwined in a dance of longing and secrets that promised to unravel at any moment. The revelation crashed into David like a thunderstorm, darkening the skies of his heart with a swirling vortex of emotions that left him breathless. Ethan, the bright-eyed boy he had seen in the magazine, had been his son all along, a truth so overwhelming that David felt as if his world was collapsing around him. The echo of laughter he had once shared with Sarah now felt like distant memories laced with an unshakable bitterness. He clenched his fists, feeling the pulse of rage and sorrow intertwine within him, and could barely contain the tempest of questions swirling in his mind. How could she have kept this from him? The weight of betrayal threatened to crush him as he stormed toward her, the elegant surroundings of the Han Group office fading into insignificance. Sarah stood across the room, her expression a mix of defiance and dread, a woman who had fought fiercely to protect the little world she had created. As David confronted her, his voice trembled with hurt and anger, demanding to know why she had deprived him of the chance to be a father. He said that he had loved her deeply, that they had shared dreams of a future together, yet here he was faced with the cruel reality that a piece of his heart had grown up without him. Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and her defenses began to crumble. She responded by saying that the life they once dreamed of together had been ripped away by his family, asserting that Chairman Han would never have allowed her to raise Ethan in peace. As she spoke, her voice cracked, revealing glimpses of the pain she had endured, the walls she had built around her heart to shield both herself and her son. She had been forced into a corner, a choice between fighting her greatest fear or succumbing to the ruthless legacy of the Han family, a legacy that had already cost her so much. David's heart ached for her, but the bitterness of his own loss lingered like a bitter wine, mingling anger with sorrow. He accused her of robbing him of precious moments, birthdays, first words, bedtime stories that could never be returned. The thought of years stolen away stirred a tempest within, each word sharp as glass. He said he had been left to wander through life believing Sarah had chosen to walk away from him willingly, her decision tearing them apart as he struggled under the weight of familial obligations and inherited expectations. The truth, however, his son a living testament to the love they had once shared. It felt like a betrayal of the highest order, the kind that fractures relationships irrevocably. In the shadows, hidden just beyond the doorframe, Jessica listened intently, her calculating mind seizing upon this treasure trove of information. She held the key to unraveling Sarah's secret and was emboldened by the prospect of leveraging this truth for her own ends. As she eavesdropped, her heart raced with the thrill of a predator who stalked its prey. She understood the implications of this revelation, realizing that Sarah had stood in the way of her own ambitions. Jessica envisioned a swift retaliation, a campaign to ensnare David back into her life while simultaneously undermining Sarah's position as a mother. She knew she would inform Chairman Han, who would seize upon this scandal like a shark sensing blood in the water. As their confrontation heated up, Sarah trembled, the emotional stakes raging like a forest fire, consuming everything in its path. This exchange, explosive and raw, tore at the very fabric of their once sacred bond. Each accusation hung in the air, heavy as autumn leaves, swirling around them like ghosts of their past. The devastation of unspoken words echoed in the silence that followed, and both realized the chasm that separated them had grown deeper than they ever imagined. The consequences of their decisions loomed ominously above them, threatening to pull them apart just as they had begun to confront their buried feelings, and with Jessica's venomous presence lurking in the shadows, Sarah understood that this battle was just beginning. Every word exchanged echoed with the promise of lingering ramifications, testing their love and the fragile bond they had almost rekindled. The air inside Sarah's small yet stylish apartment was thick with tension, the soft hum of the city outside providing an ironic backdrop to her escalating anxiety. The chaos of her thoughts swirled like the fabric scraps littering her workroom, remnants of countless late nights spent in pursuit of her dreams. Now, those dreams felt precariously close to unraveling as she held the legal documents in her trembling hands, the words custody battle glaring back at her like a cruel reminder of her worst fears manifesting into reality. The Han family had made their move, claiming, with a chilling confidence, that Ethan was theirs by birthright, a Han heir that should never have been hidden away. Each line of text felt like a knife twisting in her heart as she thought of the life she built to protect her son from a world that had once tried to take her away from his father. She inhaled deeply, struggling to maintain her composure for Ethan, whose laughter echoed from the living room, blissfully oblivious to the storm threatening to tear their little family apart. As she stepped into the room, her heart ached at the sight of him, his small hands diligently working on a colorful drawing, his brow furrowed in concentration. It was moments like these that reminded her of what she was fighting for, and she knelt beside him, masking her turmoil with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When he looked up at her, his innocent blue eyes shimmering with trust, he asked her what was wrong, unable to grasp the weight of the situation. She responded by saying that everything was fine, hoping her facade would shield him from the reality creeping in. But inside, the battle was beginning to rage. She had to protect him, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, across town in the opulent office of Han Group, David sat in front of a wall of glass, gazing out at the skyline. His mind raced as the truth settled heavily on his chest, the revelation of Ethan's existence a gnawing pain he had never anticipated. A torrent of emotions surged through him: anger at Sarah for keeping his son hidden, sorrow for the years lost, confusion about the family he had devoted his life to. He had once believed his family was all he needed, but now he glimpsed the extent of their manipulation, how they had crafted an image of loyalty that kept him blind to their oppressive control. The news of the impending court battle had shaken him to his core. The very idea of his mother's chilling smile knowing that their lineage could prevail was unbearable. He thought of the fleeting moments he had shared with Sarah, the laughter, the dreams, the love they once envisioned flourishing together, and now, those memories felt tainted by their current reality. As he wrestled with his feelings, Jessica lingered, her presence a reminder of the duplicity he wished to shed. Leaning against the doorway, she smirked, her ambition fueling her intentions. She had always seen Sarah as a threat, and with this new development, she sensed an opportunity to leverage the situation to her advantage, sowing seeds of doubt in David's heart strategically. Yet even amidst her scheming, she could not overlook the undeniable shift within David as he slowly began to realize the depth of his family's betrayal. In the throes of anxiety, Sarah worked tirelessly, reshaping her designs and pouring her heart into fabric. She felt as if the very essence of her being was being tested as she strategically crafted a legal defense to unify their small family against the powerful Han legacy. In quiet moments, she glanced across the room at Ethan's drawing, a colorful explosion of innocence and imagination, reminding her of the promise she made to protect him at all costs. The thought of losing him was unbearable, even more so with the looming threat of the Han family, a formidable army ready to erase her existence from their lives. With thoughts grinding her determination, she couldn't help but remember the night they were torn apart, how love had once blossomed in the shadows only now to be eclipsed by shadows. How could she have allowed dreams to slip through her fingers? The memory of David's shocked expression at the awards ceremony haunted her every waking moment, urging her to revisit emotions she believed she had buried deep. As she prepared for the battle ahead, she steeled her resolve: she would not let history repeat itself. David's memories of their unfinished story, intertwined with her own, kept her fighting spirit alive. She was ready to face the storm swirling around them, determined to emerge victorious. For Ethan's sake, she disregarded the weight of her past and stepped forward, fueled by a fierce love that refused to back down. Sarah would rise to the challenge, armed with her creativity and the unbreakable bond she shared with her son. She whispered silently to herself that she wouldn't allow the hands of fate to dictate their future any longer, or let the cold grasp of the Han family tear apart the heart of the family she fought so hard to create. David languished in the shadows of his corporate empire, the weight of the Han legacy pressing upon his chest like a leaden shroud. He could hear the bustling sounds of the office around him, the click of typing, the low hum of strategizing voices, and the faint rustle of crisp suits brushing against one another, yet all he felt was the suffocating silence of his own indecision. The dawning realization that he had to make a choice gripped him with a feverish urgency, one that began to ripple through the core of his being. The image of Ethan's innocent eyes kept haunting him, mingling with memories of Sarah, the warmth of her laughter, and the tenderness with which she once held him, creating an intricate tapestry of love and loss. It was in this moment of reckoning that David finally saw the truth. The family he had known his entire life had always been a gilded cage, and it was time to break free. As he walked into his father's expansive office with its imposing mahogany desk and views of the Seoul skyline, he felt an unfamiliar sense of determination building within him. Chairman Han, sitting behind the desk with a commanding air, looked up, eyebrows furrowing in annoyance at the intrusion. David opened his mouth, his heart racing as he found his voice amid the cacophony of conflicting emotions. He said that he could no longer follow the path laid out for him, that the years of privilege and control had led him to a life devoid of true happiness. He declared that he was stepping down as CEO of Han Group, a move that left Chairman Han momentarily speechless. The silence that followed was thick enough to suffocate, punctuated only by the ticking of a clock that slowly slipped into the background as David found his footing, fully aware that this was the pivotal moment that would define his future. The look of shock and indignation on his father's face was no match for the clarity of purpose that flooded David's veins. Outside, the sun bathed the city in brilliant hues, casting long shadows and illuminating his resolve. He felt lighter somehow, as if the chains of expectation that had bound him for so long had finally shattered. Meanwhile, Jessica looked on from the outskirts, her expression a blend of disbelief and betrayal, having lost the man she had once thought would always stand by her side. In a last-ditch effort to recapture what she believed was hers, she approached David, her voice laced with desperation as she pleaded for another chance, but he simply responded by saying that he could no longer sacrifice his happiness for her expectations or for the constraints of his lineage. He felt an unexpected surge of strength course through him as he took a step away from her, the bond between them forged from convenience and status now fully severed. As she watched him retreat, Jessica's heart raced with anger and fear, recognizing that without David, her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. Even as David focused on his newfound independence, Sarah was locked in a battle of her own as she prepared for the upcoming court date, a tense mixture of anxiety and determination. The fear of losing her son weighed heavily on her, but she refused to cower in the face of the Han family's overwhelming power. She rehearsed her statements in front of a mirror, the determined glimmer in her eyes reflecting the fierce protectiveness she felt for Ethan. Just as David had chosen to battle his past, Sarah was equally steadfast in her resolve. She would fight tooth and nail to keep her son safe. Each day of the legal struggle brought new challenges, but Sarah found strength in the support of friends who cheered her on. The courtroom would be their arena, and she would enter like a lion protecting her cub, driven by the love that had flourished in their secret world. As the sun began to set on that pivotal day, David felt an exhilaration he hadn't experienced in years, a jaw-clenching mix of trepidation and excitement coursing through him as he prepared to face both his family and his fate. He finally began to realize that love was not just about holding on to the past, but about embracing the future he yearned for, whether that future included Sarah and Ethan or an entirely new path. With a newfound clarity, he resolved to step into the light, determined not to let the influence of the Han family govern his heart any longer. They had forged a bond that could heal old wounds, but it would require courage and conviction on all fronts, and he was ready to face whatever remnants of his family's control lay ahead. As they stepped out of the courthouse, sunlight bathed their faces, illuminating the path ahead, a path untainted by the shadows of the past. Sarah felt a profound sense of relief wash over her, mingling with a cautious optimism that began to blossom in her heart. David walked beside her, his hand gently resting on her shoulder, a reassuring presence that hinted at the possibility of a new beginning. Ethan, with his innocent curiosity, asked why they were so happy, prompting laughter that echoed joyously in the air. David looked down at his son, taking in every detail. The boy's sparkling eyes were mirrors of his own, and in that moment, he resolved to fill in the void that had lingered for far too long. But as they embraced this new chapter, a slight shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The battle against the Han family may have been won, but she could feel the brewing storm lingering in the background, teasing the edges of their newfound happiness. Just then, a sleek black car pulled up, its tinted windows reflecting the bright sky. Out stepped Chairman Han, a quiet but powerful force, his gaze sharp and calculating, as if he had not yet conceded defeat. Sarah's heart raced, and David's grip on her tightened. Chairman Han's voice, calm yet filled with authority, sliced through the moment as he approached them. "You may have won this round, but the war is far from over," he said succinctly, his eyes narrowing at both David and Sarah. The tension in the air thickened as David moved protectively in front of Sarah and Ethan, the determination to shield his new family lighting a fiery resolve within him. With one last, defiant glance at the chairman, Sarah felt an undeniable strength rising within her. She had fought too hard to let fear dictate her future. "We will always fight, no matter what," she replied. Her voice was steady, echoing through the crisp air as if to declare that they would stand together unbroken and fierce. As they walked away, hand in hand, the world before them was limitless, full of potential and promise. Yet even amidst the laughter and the warmth enveloping them, the reality of their struggle loomed like a shadow, a lingering reminder that their journey was only beginning. They had faced insurmountable odds, but as David turned to Sarah and whispered that they would face whatever came next together, the bonds of love they shared ignited with renewed fervor. The echoes of the past blended with visions of their future as they became a family in the truest sense, a family ready to tackle any challenge head-on. And somewhere, in the background, a faint but unmistakable whisper surfaced. Rumors of more turmoil and challenges ahead stirred in the winds of Seoul, hinting that their lives were intertwined with secrets yet to unfold. Just as this victory dawned, the shadows of the Han Empire lingered, a reminder that the fight for their love and family was not just a chapter, but an ongoing saga full of twists and turns. As the night settled softly over the city, their laughter echoed like a promise, one that signaled that while love is the strongest force of all, the story of Sarah, David, and Ethan was far from over. The horizon held bright possibilities, thrilling adventures, and perhaps, unforeseen fates, leaving whispers of what could come lingering tantalizingly in the air. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to Happiness of Love. That way, you won't miss any of our heartfelt romances. See you in the next love story.